Hey scrappers, if you're looking to figure out what materials you should sell this week or hold this week, now is the time to do it. Our weekly report is going to give you that information, up-to-date market news, pricing. Let's get right into it and we'll talk about it inside. Hey scrappers, Tom here from the iScrap app, and today is Wednesday, September 24th, 2025, and we are live right now, 1 p.m. Eastern. So if you are tuning in, please ask me questions about the markets. We have some good news today. We have some bad news today. We have some in-between news today. But let us know, and if you're watching us on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel, and I'll plug the rest of the plugs later on. So where are we in this unbelievably tumultuous, up and down, rocky market? Let's just go right to the board. Virginia, if you could pull up what's happening to copper today, let's share the good news. Always nice to start with good news first. So copper prices today are up 4%. So we've seen copper prices up 4%. That is almost 20 cents per pound, as you can see on the trading board behind me. And unfortunately, this uphill price climb is because of a bad problem that happened in Indonesia. So one of the biggest copper miners in the world, Freeport, there were mudslides at one of their, if not one of the top 5 biggest copper and gold mines in the entire world. It crippled their entire mining operation. 2 people, unfortunately, lost their lives. And that's bad news, right? And I'm trying not to sound bad. This is bad news that the prices are up. Okay, it's bad news that the prices are up, but the reason was because of this mudslide catastrophe, and they are going to be shutting the mine down for at least a month, maybe more. So this morning, when I checked prices around 7:15 a.m., they were trading at 460, and they were down 4 cents per pound. Here we are, up since that point over 22 cents. At one point today, we're up over 4%. So week over week, the markets are now up by a couple percentage points. And when I look at these markets and I look at a horrible thing that happened this morning, I actually think we're going to see $5 copper. And what I liked about this price increase, again, I keep saying I like the price increase. It's for a bad reason, so please just put that aside, right? This price increase went up on the US-based COMEX and on the world-based LME markets. So we saw prices rising simultaneously. And if you've been watching me at all the last 5 or 6 months, we've been talking about how LME and US COMEX have been so different because of the tariffs, and then there weren't tariffs, and they were on, and they were off, and blah, 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 blah. So now we see prices kind of corresponding with each other. They're moving at the same pace, and we may see $5 copper in the coming days. So earlier when I wrote the report, I had a hold on stainless steel, but I would probably suggest holding copper for 3 or 4 days. So if you're looking at the markets and saying, hey, Tom, should I cash in today? You know, it may be worth your time to wait 3 or 4 days, because what we're going to see is a little bit of a lag time, right? I don't expect my scrapyard to increase prices tomorrow, because we need to make sure that this has solid footing and legs. But tomorrow's Thursday. I would tell you by Monday, if these prices stick, you should expect a 15 to 25 cent jump in copper. So if you've been holding off waiting for that magical $5 trading number, we may be days away from it, from this unfortunate experience in Indonesia, but it is going to be something that we're watching in the coming days. But these are real price increases, and they will help you, especially 1,000 pounds of copper. That's a $200 swing. So check that out. And of course, if you don't know where the prices are, that's why iScrap exists. So you can find scrap yards near you. You can check our national price averages. You can see prices that other people are getting for their scrap, while simultaneously learning more on how to make more money with your scrap by sorting, separating, and processing. So copper prices are up. Originally, our report said that they were going to be down, and we're now up 2% week over week. So we're watching these very closely with big intent on copper markets going up higher. That was the good. let's just skip right to the bad because it's going to be bad. And we're going to pull up another article that I'm going to talk about right now. And it talks about steel. Just look at the headline. China's steel slowdown hits global iron ore market. Wah, 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 wah. This is bad. If you've been holding on to any of your steel for any reason, I'd suggest getting rid of it. When you read this article and you see some of the things that they're talking about, everyone keeps asking me, Tom, why aren't the steel prices going up? I talked to 3 traders this morning for almost 2 hours altogether to learn about the markets, and no one sees anything good going on. The best advice that I would give you on steel markets right now, especially on light iron, is if you're in the neighborhood, in the area of a scrap yard that has a shredder, that will be your best option when it comes to steel pricing. We've seen that steel shredders are having prices $20 to $50 a ton higher than non-shredding operations. Now, that's largely due to the shredder being able to pick out non-ferrous after they shred it out, pulling out copper, aluminum, brass, stainless, etc. But when we're looking at these markets right now, steel doesn't have a huge running room. There's no humongous construction projects anywhere in the world going on that are sucking steel out of the market. There's no large-scale growth like we've wanted in India or in different countries in Africa. These things have not been materializing. Now, last week, we saw the Federal Reserve lower interest rates, and that's going to make it less expensive to borrow money. So we're going to be interested to see throughout the rest of this year if the Federal Reserve lowers interest rates 1 or 2 more times, how that could help the steel markets. And let me explain. If interest rates go down, companies want to build factories, invest in equipment that use steel. They're going to be able, under the new tax law, to fully depreciate these assets in year 1. So if we start to see more companies borrowing more money and putting more investments into the country, we may then start to see these markets and prices increasing. But until that happens, I don't see anything good on the steel market for the next 6 months. It would almost shock me if through Q4 of 2025 and Q1 of 2026, we saw any type of a running room on an upward trend. I just don't see it outside of $5 or $10 per ton. You know, here in New Jersey, there's not a lot of shredding options. So I've actually found that my light iron price has been some of the lowest prices that we've seen, and even lower compared to some scrap yards an hour and a half or 2 hours away. But that's because they're next to some shredders, giving them higher price stability and higher price opportunities. So these steel markets are really very difficult right now, even with oil prices so low, fuel prices so low. We're not seeing the industrial demand. And what we've seen in this article is how the Chinese have weak construction. Just taking a blip from this here. Iron ore futures hit multi-week lows as China's weak construction, property, manufacturing sectors drag on demand. Steel inventories are piling up in China, signaling sluggish consumption despite government stimulus attempts. So even as the markets have gone down and as the Chinese have tried to make them go up by stimulating the market with money, it's not working. It's not working. And steel prices are going to go lower. I just got off the phone, and one of those 3 phone calls I had, someone expects steel prices down 20 a ton next month. That's October, which is next week. So if you're holding steel, please stop doing that unless you don't need the money. But we got a question. Peter says, Tom, in your opinion, what will help the world economy grow again? That's a heavy question. What we need to see is to be able to have interest rates going down. We need to be able to have the tariff situation in the United States stabilize. If we see a trade deal happen with the Chinese, that will dramatically help. If we see the world ending these two major conflicts with Israel, with Ukraine, those would be some big factors that would turn the wheel. Lowering interest rates by 1/4 point again will not spur economic investment. I've talked about this before, and it's because I've been in the power space for many years. When you used to build a power plant, they would need 30,000 tons of steel per plant, if not more. And a smaller plant would need 20,000 tons. Well, today, those same plants are being built with 1/10. That's 10% of the amount of steel. So now you could build, 10 power plants for the same amount of weight as one used to consume. So when you see how scales have gone down as technology has increased, making gas turbines more efficient, making things called SMRs, small modular reactors, which are nuclear power, coming online in the next few years, smaller footprints, more prevalent. These are going to be things that help us as consumers have cheaper electricity costs, more reliable electricity, so, more dependent on United States opposed to outside influences. But these are not things that are happening today, right, in full scale to help those markets come down. So a little bit of a long-winded response, Peter, but excellent question. Thank you very much. And thank you for the business. We've been working with you for many years and appreciate it. Next question. Follow your obsession says, I mostly scrap aluminum and steel, and steel cans more than other mixed scrap.
Right.
How does that look? So aluminum cans right now are fantastic. UBCs are really strong. And let me give you a few reasons why I love the aluminum market and I really like the can market. Water companies are moving from plastics to aluminum. Car companies are moving from steel to aluminum. Other beverage companies, outside of just alcohol or soda, they're moving to aluminum. So we're seeing more aluminum bottles increasing a major market demand. You think about it, there's 350 million people in the United States, give or take a few million, right? How many bottles are people using every day? How many cans of beer, soda, seltzer are people consuming? That is a humongous driving factor in pricing. And as we see those things happening, as we see the transition coming, that's great for the aluminum industry. Now, on a steel side of things, not a lot of good. And I just talked about that for a few minutes. We're seeing a gluttony of steel going into the market. It is hurting the U.S. consumer. The U.S. scrapper, because we're just not going to see these steel prices going up. So hopefully that helped. Another question. Galemeyer 75, do you consider fridge, freezer, and AC compressors as electric motors or just compressors? The yard I go to considers them as electric motors. I do not consider them as electric motors, and if that yard is doing that, well, good for you. Maybe they cut them apart. We have another category called sealed units or compressors, depending on your lingo, and it generally is because it's harder to get the copper out of those, and there's generally 2 to 3% less copper in sealed units or compressors than there is from electric motors. Electric motors, you can pull out the fields, you can pull out the rotor that's inside that's spinning. There's copper in multiple places. Sometimes they're using aluminum castings on the outside, where on the sealed unit side of things, it's steel, small amount of copper, got to drain it of the oil, got to cut it open to get to the materials. It's a lot more involved, but thank you. Great question. Hopefully that helped you better understand. Another question? No? Okay. So let's go back to the good news. So we went good, bad. Let's go to good. Catalytic Converters, sponsored by rrcats.com. We have now seen all-time record high prices on platinum. Pause for the applause. Yay! Markets are up, right? We've now started to see some of the highest catalytic converter prices in 2 years or so. That's spurred by those platinum prices leading the charge. And those platinum prices are rising because gold and silver are also going up, and people are looking to diversify their investments in different metals instead of just putting all of their eggs in the gold basket, etc. So platinum going up is really great, and many people consider it such a precious metal because it can be made into jewelry as well as other areas. Now, what we're waiting for is rhodium and palladium prices to increase, but those aren't quote unquote sexy metals that everyone knows on an industry-wide level. People probably aren't going to invest in those to buy rhodium bars to keep in their closets or their safes. So it's not as prevalent as platinum may be, but we have seen those prices going up. And what we're hoping for in the coming months and years is to see more of these vehicles go into more of a hybrid model, increasing the demand for material going into the catalytic converters, and then increasing the future recycling consumption, and then the demand consumption that's going to be needed by auto companies for those higher powered catalytic converters. So we're watching these markets really closely. It's going to be unbelievably interesting to see what happens. But hey, good news is good news, and we're happy to see that those prices are going up. What did I miss today? Aluminum, another solid piece of market news. Week over week, aluminum markets have been very strong other than certain grades like siding. We've seen siding prices going closer to sheet prices as those prices have narrowed on a reporting side of things. We're seeing sheet aluminum in the 48 to 55 cent range, aluminum siding about a nickel a pound higher. Traditionally, that siding price was 8 to 10 cents higher. Hopefully we can see that increase coming soon. But I'm going to tell you, we've had a few questions recently, and everyone's like, how can I make more money? How can I separate my scrap more? Aluminum could become your bread and butter if you know what you're looking for and you know how to separate it. We have a lot of customers that have made so much extra money by Rockaway Recycling teaching them, iScrap sending them videos on how to be able to utilize their aluminum, use the tools that they have to separate it into different categories. So while aluminum prices don't have a huge increase, in fact, week over week, they're down a little over 2%, we're still seeing very strong signs of demand. And if you go back to what I said a few minutes ago about the beverage market, that's a humongous opportunity for the aluminum industry, and we are really excited to see those markets moving forward. Now, looking at some of the other market news I have, we've talked about different things from copper prices to steel and aluminum. And one thing to really key in on and think about is the issues that the Chinese are having, causing a big tail or domino effect on the scrap steel industry. So this is what we have to encounter, scrappers, and we'll continue to go with it as we do. Now, next week I will not be live. It will be pre-recorded, but that doesn't mean we don't want you to ask questions. So if you're asking this when we weren't live, not a problem. Leave us some questions. We'll get back to you. I'm excited to be filming some new videos in the coming days that will be released. So if you haven't liked and subscribed to our page, please don't forget to do so. So any other news, questions, or anything you want us to talk about, scrappers, you let us know. We'll get to that next week. Today is Wednesday, September 24th, 2025. My name is Tom from Rockaway Recycling, the iScrap app. Until next week, I'll scrap you.